Okay, we are moving on to the next agenda item. The next objective that we have is to cover the organization of the course in Blackboard. Now you're looking at one of my courses in Blackboard. In fact, right now I have a bunch on the screen. And they're all online, so it's very convenient. I use this organization, by the way, for online and courses that are also in-person, face-to-face courses. And I use this structure for, well, right now I'm teaching mostly ethics, but I teach some applied ethics courses. I teach Introduction to Ethics, another section, Introduction to Ethics. Um, Business ethics, ethical problems of business society, and criminal justice ethics. And I'm just using this as an example because this is the course that I've taught the longest, and it's the most mature, so it's the best one for me to use as an example of what Blackboard will look like for you. Now, if you do not know what Blackboard is, well, I don't know how you're seeing this unless a friend of yours is showing you, but notice there's up in the corner of this browser, web browser, it says CUNY Blackboard, City University of New York Blackboard. Okay, and that is the what we call the course management system for our courses at the City University of New York. Blackboard's, by the way, the name of the company. Now, notice it runs within a web browser, which means there are a lot of ways you could see it. And they even have an application where you can do a lot of this stuff on a phone or a tablet or an iPad or an Android. Um, and by the way, at least in my recent uses of these, I didn't find them very effective as an instructor. That is the phone and the tablet app, the iPad app. But perhaps you, as a student, will find them more useful. In any event, I always suggest go back to a computer to do the stuff if you have that as an alternative. Make sure that you have headphones, otherwise you can't hear me right now. And and you try to use a web browser that works well with Blackboard. One that might work the best is Chrome, that is Google's web browser Chrome. Microsoft has come out with a new browser. It used to be Internet Explorer, and now it's called Edge. I really haven't tested that one out, but if you're running into problems, try to go back to Chrome because that's the one that I usually go back to. Um, there's also one called, it's either Firefox or Foxfire. I think it's Firefox. I think the other one is the name of a movie. Uh, ba- uh, it's a Clint Eastwood movie where he was a somebody who worked for the United States government going to steal a new fighter plane developed by the Russians, and so that was the name of the Russian plane. In any event, you guys can figure out the company is Mozilla. You can download these both on a. Oh, and I didn't mention if you're on a Mac, um, you're probably using Safari, the standard Internet Explorer, the Internet browser on Mac. That usually works. Sometimes there are some problems. If there are problems, I'd suggest just installing Chrome because it's a freebie. Okay, so now here is the way the course will look. One thing that I should mention is you might go into a course and it might look, I'm about to enlarge this, something, I'm going to get this up to 300%. Okay, something like this. And maybe you have visual problems and you need to look at it this way, but you're going to have to alter what you're doing. I mean, if you have to look at it like that, look at it like this. Up here in the left corner, there's a circle with this greater than sign, this arrow pointing this way, which will get the menu up that way. It will make it visible, I should say. And my suggestion is to keep it at 100% if you can see. And I didn't think I got, now it's at 100%. Notice the menu has disappeared, but I have this little arrow in this bar. So similarly, if you hit the arrow, it will keep the menu up, which is normally where I like to be when I'm going through any of my Blackboard tasks. Okay, so notice over here, we have a menu. At top, it says the name of the course, and there are a bunch of items over here. I'm going to put on, and notice we're on the home page. It says home page there. Up here, right over there, if you can see, it says home page, name of the course. This is right below the blue line. Next, name of the course is unavailable. By the time you're looking at it, it will be available. Otherwise, you're not seeing this. And home page, which is where you are on this main menu. Okay, and on the homepage, you're going to see, and in fact, they usually put a lot of tools. Maybe some of your other courses have that, all kinds of things that I think just complicated. So all I leave up are announcements. And in fact, if there was a way to just have all the announcements appear in one place, I would just call it announcements. And here, if you click on it, you can go, if you hit more announcements, you're going to go to announcements, which is the next page, and uh, you'll see the announcements. Now, over here, there's only one announcement right now. It's actually going to look a little bit different by the time you get there, but it's going to be a welcome message. And as I add announcements, oftentimes I'll tell you there are assignments, there are things to do, remind you of things that are going on, make announcements as I would in class. The new announcements will be on top, maybe warning you of a midterm coming up or a final coming up. That's where that's where you will see things in announcements. These are general announcements to the class, not a personal message to you. Okay, so that's announcements, and the newest announcements will be on top. Okay, next item on the menu, if we go down a little bit, is course information. Well, what do you think we're going to find in there? Give yourself a candy bar if you said information about the course. Okay, in particular, at the top, we're going to see the syllabus for the course. Then there's going to be some other stuff. Eventually, I will get to explain to you how we're going to meet for our office hours, maybe on Zoom, and it'll enable you to dial in. And I don't know if you looked at it before, but most of my courses this semester are zero textbook courses, and in fact, this ethics one is. In fact, it says, if we go back to the home page a second, on my banner, if I could get it to display, it says fully online, okay, zero textbook cost, meaning there are no textbooks. But now, if we look at information, what you're going to see sometimes are some books in there, which I recommend for students, especially for students who are having difficulty. Take a look at them. I think they're helpful in the course. It's worth spending a couple of bucks on them, but you don't have to do that. I am not going to give you work. I'm not going to specifically assign work out of those things. And if they do, I will provide the pages that you need from those courses to do that. Okay, so that's the course information section. Next one is the course content. Course content is the area where you're going to be spending most of your time. And in course content, you will see a bunch of folders. If you're not familiar with Blackboard, but you're familiar with computers, you'll understand how folders work. So we have different folders. We'll have weekly folders for every week. Plus, I will have at some point final exam, and there'll be a midterm exam. Now, these folders will begin appearing. I am not going to give these all to you day one because it's just going to be too confusing for you and too confusing for me to try to keep it straight. Rather, they'll be coming up. I'll be making this stuff available a week in advance of when the week is coming up, or maybe 2 weeks in advance, depending on how far ahead I can keep of you guys between grading the stuff that you're doing or reading the stuff that you're doing, seeing our interactions, and taking care of things. But the idea is the way you're going to get through the course is you go into course content, and now we're in week one. So you got to do the week one stuff. So we click on week one, and we see there are a bunch of items in a specific order. And right on top of these, well, when you see this, there will be one that looks a little bit like this with a different title. It'll say welcome. It's going to be a YouTube with my YouTube welcome message, and it's going to also mention assignment number 1 and assignment number 2, which I hope you've gotten started. In fact, I hope you finished them already. The first one is asking you to send me an email at this address, which is a special email address that I have just for student communications. It's a Gmail address that I've left it. I don't use, I suggest that you just use the Kingsborough email for things that are official, like if you need to withdraw, if you have a question about a grade, etc. If it's an official thing that we're going to follow up with officially, we have to do that on the Kingsborough email. If it's just a question about course material, this is the best place to send it to me. And what I'd like you to do, since I have discovered, unless you're one of the exceptions, that most students do not check their Kingsborough email on a regular basis, but the vast majority of students have emails on the phones, and the vast majority of students have cell phones and their emails on it. So what I'd like you to do is send me an email to that address, And on the subject line, write your course number and the section, so I know what course you're in. And in the message body itself, I'd like you on the first line to put your first name and your last name. That is, don't type your first name, the words your first name. I want you to actually write what your first name and last name is. And if you think this is a strange request, it's not as dunderhead a request as you might think, but I've had students who have email addresses that are about equivalent to the meanest mother in Brooklyn or the hottest, whatever in Brooklyn. Had I known you better, I'm sure I would be able to figure out who on my roster you are. But this way, I'll have your first name and last name, so there'll be nothing left to my imagination, which I don't have much of an imagination. And if you wouldn't mind, I'd appreciate it if you leave a phone number there. I'm not using this to contact you at midnight or at 3 in the morning, asking you to come pick me up someplace or asking you out for a date. The only reason I will use this is for getting in contact with you if you've kind of fallen off the face of the course for a while, just to see what's going on and try to make sure that you don't end up in some kind of trouble in the course as a result of this. Okay, now you'll also be getting things. That's what that first thing is. The second thing is an assignment. And what you should do when you go through this is go through the week and you go through item by item by item, and you should be completing all of these items one at a time. And the way to get to them is the first one, you can click the assignment, but basically all you're going to do is get the text and it's going to tell you the same thing that we just went over. But if we go down to the next one, it's going to say student educational objectives, background survey, and it's actually I'm asking you some questions that are going to help me get to know you a little bit better and help me tailor what I'm presenting and my responses to you to your particular educational needs. And notice, okay, it gives you instructions, it's a description, it's a test. I'm actually giving you two tries. Try not to use the second one. You're going to press continue, and it comes up as a test. Now, this I do it this way for two reasons. First of all, when I give you quizzes and tests, I'm going to give you to you on this platform. So if you get through this and you're able to come down here and read the question and answer the question over here, I probably should have given you multiple choice, but there'll be another thing where you have multiple choice. I'll know that you're able to do that. My suggestion is as you do this, answer by answer, save your answer, or then you could save all answers. And when you're happy with the whole thing, that's when you'll press submit. Okay, let's go back to, let's close this window so you get an idea. So that was the second thing that you're going to do. And we will also be going down item by item, and I will be putting, what do you call it? A YouTube. Boy, had a little bit of a distraction. I'll be putting YouTubes. In fact, lectures that I'll be giving you are going to be narrating slides. You might have seen, you will see this on a regular basis. And what you're going to do is with this, you can either, I don't know if you can click on it. For me, in fact, let me try to put myself in the student preview. This sometimes works. It sometimes does not work. Okay, let me get you back to where I was, course content. Oh, I can't get you back there. I have to apologize. It's not available to students, so the students can see nothing right now. Okay, so back to course content where we were. We'll pick it up again, week 1. So you might be able to actually watch the YouTube by clicking on the title, but here we also see watch video. You can get it that way. It'll pop up in a box, and you can get the YouTube started, and
This is a course introduction.
Okay.
The introduction to ethics.
I've heard this already. You guys are going to watch it, but you watch it and you listen to it and go through the whole thing. And I should mention, first of all, I would turn on the closed captions, especially if you're not a native speaker of English. That will help you. And in fact, that'll help you exit full screen mode. But it's probably a good idea to keep the titles on because you're going to come across some words that you don't know, and occasionally they might help you with the spelling. Sometimes Blackboard gets it wrong because I use the automatic translator. But once we get to the end of it, you're going to see other things pop up. Usually, all of my videos are part of what they call a playlist in YouTube. don't go to the next one automatically. Once you're finished with that one, escape out of it, hit the escape key, okay, or escape from the full screen mode, X out of the box, and go that way. One thing I should have mentioned, and let me just go through. Here's an example of a YouTube video we'll be seeing during the course of the semester, but let's get it started. You hear what's going on. And if you want to advance, notice
this is a course about justice, and we begin with a story.
Closed captions are on.
Suppose you're the driver of a trolley
And if we want to go back, we just hit a back arrow, the cursor key back, cursor key forward.
And at the end of the
Okay, that's enough of that. But you get an idea how we can view it full screen mode, exit full screen mode. Okay, so that's the way YouTube's. You should be able to hear that YouTube will be doing that on a regular basis. And in fact, if you see, going to go on, I have a video introducing myself and asking you. The next thing is to introduce yourself. How are you going to introduce yourself? This is actually something that we call a discussion board. Let me just point out that the next item on the list after content is discussions. The best way to do this is do these things in order. So here, I'm going to, after I introduce myself, I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself. So you're going to click on that. You can create a thread in this forum. And I said, first name, last name, and you can say, I am over here, right? So let's say I was you. And now let me go down into this, and I'm going to go, this is me, okay, or whatever I'm going to write there. And I could either save draft if you want to look it over later on before you send it out. Not a bad idea, bad habit to get into, especially since, look, even I made a mistake in typing already, typographical error. And but save the draft, look at it, make sure you're okay with it, and then you can hit submit. You can also attach things to these. Sometimes I'm not going to let you, but usually you'll be able to. You can attach, if you want to attach a little video, you want to attach, an audio of what your answer is, but make sure if I'm asking you to write it, try to write it unless you have some disability that the office will let me know or you will let me know of, to enable you to get through the course. Okay, so that's what's going to happen with discussions. I should have backed up this way. Let me get back to where we were before we went into this. Okay, and we were in introduce yourself. And you're going to keep on going down item by item by item. It's going to look a little different. And then at the end, I'm usually going to put up, if I'm talking about a certain set of slides, lecture slides. You should, by the way, it's a good idea to take notes while I'm going through this. But I do have the slides. You might even want to print them before you go through the lecture so you can look at them, because some words will be unfamiliar to you. Some philosophical terms might be unfamiliar to you, and that'll help you get familiar with them. Okay, and remember, if you're getting lost with some of that stuff, you can back arrow through this video to find out. Okay, then there's the next item on the menu is discussions, which is where those discussion boards are. And oftentimes I'm going to ask you to actually put your postings up early in the week, and later in the week, come back and comment on your classmates' postings. And I might even put up postings commenting on postings in general. So this is another way to get back into it, to see what everybody's postings are. You'll click on the discussion board and you'll see what everybody had to say. A good way to help you understand where you're having difficulty, maybe where your classmates are having difficulty, and even to be able to ask questions. So that was discussions, it was discussion board, it says. The next thing is something called Kingsborough UJA. If you're in my applied ethics course, you'll be using this a bit. Even in this, I'd like to run some Zoom sessions, tutorial sessions where you can ask questions live, and I'll try to answer them a little bit better than I have on my videos. And I would probably post those over here, post an item and tell you to come in here to find it. So if we notice we went into it, we click that launch button. And the other thing is, if you're in an applied ethics course, I actually have copies of movies, which I'm going to be asking you to watch part of, or maybe watch the full movie. That's going to be the basis of our class discussions. So that's the way we're going to do that. And by the way, mentioning class discussions, you're saying, well, how are we having a discussion? Because after all, this is what we call an asynchronous course. I'll talk a little bit more about it. That is, We don't meet at any given time, other than if you can make it for my tutorial office hours. Um, so to accommodate that, notice that we were in Yuja. Um, I'm going to post videos there. Now, I mentioned there's this thing called Blackboard Collaborate. There are two kinds, and I just mentioned there are two kinds of online courses. One is a synchronous course, where what makes it online is just that you're doing it through the computer, but you're going to be there for certain hours during the week when that is the class time. Alternative, and that's called synchronous, right? Because the discussions are going on at the same time. They're synchronized. But there's also asynchronous, which is what a bunch of my online courses, and in fact, this semester, all my online courses, how they're going to be run. And to do that, there's this tool, Blackboard Collaborate, that might disappear because CUNY has now provided us with Zoom accounts, and I will probably use Zoom, so I might make that item in your menu disappear, so you might not even see it. Send an email. We'll send an email, and I think it usually goes to my Kingsborough account, which is not the best place to send it for me. See my grades is the other one that's going to be kind of important. So let's go into that one because you want to see what your grades are. And I should mention, notice we have these discussions, and I am going to be grading the discussions, but and when we get into the syllabus, I'll explain how the grading works. But with regard to things like, I'm going to ask you to do an assessment on a moral problem, and notice over here, the grades are out of 4. So typically, I will give grades of check, which means, hey, you gave an okay answer. You thought about it. It shows that your response was thoughtful. You understood what the problem is. Maybe you have a good answer. I'll give you a plus if you got a really good answer, really understood, you're dead on the mark. And a minus if, you tried, but you're a little bit off. I'll explain how that works into my grading. But notice there's not an easy way for me to just put check, plus, and minus on Blackboard, but what I do instead is a check is a 3, a plus is a 4, a minus is a 1, and if it doesn't even seem like you really tried, you just threw some crap up there to try to fake me into giving you some kind of grade, you will get either a 0 or a blank. And you will be able to find what those grades are through See My Grades, and also your exam grades will show up. The midterm and final grades will show up there. Okay, tools, they have other tools that you can use. Help, if you're having problems in Blackboard, that is a good place to turn first. And if you have any questions about the organization of your course in Blackboard, by all means, send an email to prof, as in professor, legum@gmail.com, the place that you're going to send me your email address. Okay, well, that's it for the organization of Blackboard, and now we're going to move on.